developing up the pipe folds now, I turn down the layer of the fold lines so that this layer isn't competing with the rest of my design. But I want the hard lines, I want the outlines to still remain intact because that's a part of the finish. That's the, what do you want to call it? It's the silhouette. So now let's zoom in into an area and let's work on the architecture in there a little bit. Let's look at these zigzag folds. Okay, so placement. I'm a bit high through here. I'm going to drop the lines down. Working on this part, I'm going to drop the lines down a little bit. My first line is going to be down here, but I'm still following the same pathway. And then what I notice is that the outside of the arm is actually going uphill and the inside of the arm is going downhill. So now we have an S-curve configuration, and that's a good thing because that's even more perspective than I was anticipating having. So let's move this line over just a tiny bit so it's not sticking out that far. I don't want any of the folds to stick out very far. The idea is to still remain simple in the silhouette of the figure. Now, when you're designing, of course, put in whatever you need to and make it easy to see at first. But then as you go to render it, that's when you start making decisions about the taste and the clarity of your piece. Taste meaning how are you handling the rendering? Are you handling it tastefully, or are you keeping everything just as large and out of scale as when you first found it? Right? And that may lead to some difficulties later on in the quality of rendering that you're looking for. But by no means is there a right or a wrong. There's just more appropriate to what you need versus less of that and more stylized or more analytical or more academic or whatever than the piece that you were anticipating to build of your own. And that all has to do with your background, what you've come from, and what knowledge base you're getting your information from. Now, the nice thing about some of these folds, there's an interior fold line along in here that goes along with his musculature. And then there's this zigzag fold that runs right into that muscle. And that's a great thing because anytime I can bring back the body, that helps describe the pose that much more clearly. And that's something to keep in mind. You have the outside or the distance line, how far out the folds might emanate from. And then you have the inside line. And what is the inside line? Well, most of the time, the inside line is going to be the body. Sometimes it is more material because of just the nature of how much folding has happened and how far away the material might be. But in most cases, like the stuff that we're dealing with here, the deepest lines in to all of these folds, those deepest lines are designing the actual physical arm, the size of the arm underneath there, and where these folds are resting upon the arm. And that then gives us a very solid architecture, a very solid design overall. Oh, because I had to move down the fold up here, I'm moving everything down just a little bit. My outside contour lines are giving me just a bit of a fit here because they are dark, 100% dark to what I originally drew them. That doesn't really matter so much here though. I think I can get around those little bits and pieces. Now with this, there's a bigger platform and it's going back in this way. And what I'm doing here is I'm finding the initial roll, the initial fold, which is right along here and right along here. Then this whole thing goes back and rests against his arm, and that's back in here. You can see an actual curvature around a pipe fold in here. And then this is resting against his arm, the very top of this entire shape. This one has an underside to it and a top side, so we can actually see the architecture within the light and the shadow. And that's fantastic because that keeps us from having to guess at almost anything now. All our information is here. We just have to decipher it better, or decipher it at all in this case. So the triangles go up and run into the other pipe folds. And you can see how much complexity there is in here, but because I have these bigger pieces already determined and separated out, it's like I just have to fill in the puzzle piece with the exact size of all the things that are sitting inside of there. And once that's been designed, we're good to go. Alright, so here's a pipe fold along here. I think I've said that now twice. That's a stupid way of answering things. We're good to go. Once we have everything solidly designed here, then we can begin the rendering process without fear of not having enough information, not having the right information, or just misinforming ourselves to the point where we're going to be chasing things much more than we're going to be finishing things. When that happens, then we know we need help. That's when we need to call in the help. Alright, so there's the arm. I'm going to move the whole thing over a little bit. That way I can kind of see this chest fold. This is going with the curvature of his body. Then it lifts up off of his body here. We get the eye of the fold in here, and then it goes back in space this way. And this is elevated off of his body. So it's something like this, and then it falls back onto his torso again. And the armpits of a tight shirt like this are going to do that. They're going to buckle out on the torso. Because the material has nowhere else to go. Because the sleeves are so short in the opening and the arms might be so big, there's bound to be an issue with some kind of displacement of the material because of, and this is down the arm as well. Some people might have larger biceps than their forearms. Some people might have larger forearms than their biceps. Some people might have large pectoralis muscles and small arm muscles. But whatever the case may be, the material is going to distress based upon those differences. And in this case here, he has fairly large pectoralis muscles, and his arms are pretty good size too, but the material is large enough to sit off of his arms. So it's more the pectoralis muscles influencing everything here. Alright, this cuts back in towards the arm. This comes out away from the arm. I'm a little nervous about making folds this far away from the body because they don't actually have much referenceable information in them that helps us read what's going on in the torso. But we can make that up if we are really that in need of things having clarity to them. So in this case here, maybe the fold line ends somewhere right along in here. That's where the crease line is, or that's where the darkest part of the fold might be. And then this comes down around like this. This goes up and around. There's an edge right along in here. I'll draw that edge first, and then I'll draw the lines up and over that. Inside of here, we have a fold going this way. So now we have these pipe folds like this. We have this triangle down here. And there's the X marks the spot. Here's this triangle. This goes out in this direction with the eye of the fold. This one goes up in this direction into another probably zigzag fold. This comes down and underneath and blends in with a second fold over here that looks like it's tucked underneath here. Or at least because there's no visible information that's going to help me understand that, I think I'm just going to go along with that information. This goes around the corner like this, then there's another zigzag right through here, and on the other side this is a very weak little shape, but there's a little shape in there, no less. There's a little extension through here, and then off of this bottom surface here we've got the last fold, pipe fold over two zigzag folds, and then the end of his shirt, the cuff. And I don't see this side, and I don't see what's going on around the corner there, but I'm still continuing it on because I want the design to feel like it belongs on this body. And then this comes down off of the pectoralis muscle, runs into the bulk of the shirt out here. Because he has so much extra shirt out there, his body has, he has a good cut to him, so the abs are tight. And because the pectoralis muscles are so tight, all the material coming off of them is very loose. And that's where all of this billowing material is kind of coming from here. There's a triangle along here with light right above it, and so this is kind of what it reads like, and then this comes up and goes over like this through here. Another triangle, another little triangle, little angle coming down off of here like this into a smaller half lock right in here where the material's folding down over itself. And then the buttons have their own influence because of the stitch line on either side of them. They are becoming a bigger influence along this pathway, and I want to respect that pathway. That's more architecture that I can clearly take advantage of. And then there's the dark line in there, which isn't actually a shadow, it's the other half of the button. So these are hidden buttons. They're hidden under a fold over bit of material here. And I just discovered that now, but that's helpful because it does help me understand what the heck is going on over here with this really dark edge. That's moving away, then coming right back, and so forth, right? So now you can see, let me turn down the armature of the clothing and the armature and the fold lines. You can see the design there now. There's much more going on to the surface than before, and we're ready for shading, because if we don't put some shadow patterns in here next, then this is going to get more and more confusing. Next step, shadows.